Hi, welcome to a very special episode of Insomnia Podcasts. I am supposed to be asleep for another hour. My body says no. It has been doing that the last few weeks. And I thought instead of being angry about it, instead of going back to bed and trying to fall asleep angrily, which I know will fail, I'll just record this podcast at the crack of Christ. Anyway, I have a few updates, and this is not all bad that I'm not asleep right now, although my partner's snoozing happily. I have a bunch of finished objects, and I think that this is one of the first times in a long time that I'm actually this close to clearing my needles. Let me show you. So last time around I showed you my Friday slipover V-neck by PetiteKnit, my first ever PetiteKnit pattern, and I finished it. It was a quite quick knit. I finished it within a week. Then I went back and I dyed it using hair colour, and that did not a lot, but it did help a bit with evening out the colour differences. And that also means that I was able to use every little last scrap of that alpaca yarn that I had. So that was a real stash buster. It is a bit too short, granted, but I am a long-torsoed person, and with the alpaca content, it is bound to stretch over time. So what I found was the cutest look so far, because I've worn it on a few different occasions, was wearing it over top of a dress. Because if I wear it with jeans, there is a tiny little gap where my t-shirt sort of pokes out over like the very top of the jean. And with a dress, obviously that's not a problem. But I've worn it, and the reason for making it, for making the vest, was seeing, am I one of the cool girls who can pull off wearing a vest? And I think the answer has to be yes, which is a big moment. It feels great. So the Friday slipover, it's not the ideal colour. I've been looking at it a few times and just wishing it were not brown. So another vest might be on the horizon fairly soon, because apparently I want another vest. I have some PetiteKnit that might be up for grabs when it comes to a vest. It's such a lovely shade of blue, but that is not what we're talking about. The Friday slipover I knit, as I said, in the alpaca from Sandnes garn, 100% alpaca. I think it's discontinued, and from my research that is probably because alpaca is such an unreliable yarn over time. But they have an alpaca wool, so an alpaca wool mix, and that, as far as I can tell, as far as my insomniac brain remembers, I think they still sell that line. That yarn is a bit thicker. I used that as my contrast colours when I knit the colourwork sweater for my partner for Christmas, and I could definitely tell the difference when I was holding the yarns. So the alpaca is thinner, but incredibly soft. So 10 out of 10 for the yarn feel, but the colour isn't ideal. I knit the vest on 4mm needles, and I knit the fourth size. I knit a size medium anyway. I did pick up fewer stitches around the armholes to knit the rib, and although I think that was a good idea because it sort of cinched everything together a bit, I could have picked up a few more stitches because now when I wear my t-shirts, they sort of bunch up a bit in the armpit because the sleeve hole is just too small. So not ideal. It works great when I'm wearing like a long sleeved cling to my body tight t-shirt, but if I'm wearing just a normal relaxed one, it's a bit too, the sleeveholes are a bit too small. It was a very easy knit. It was an easy pattern to follow. I understand why she's so popular with her patterns. It was, however, not as relaxed of a knit as I had been hoping. I had initially thought I'd just knit a stockinette sweater vest, and then I said, oh, that's kind of boring, isn't it? Let me knit this one with the broken rib pattern. And then it came time to actually do the knitting, and I realised that my RSI is very heavily triggered by purling, and with a broken rib you do have to purl. And I actually think that it's the most triggered by the switch between purls and knits, and just knitting and just purling is not as bad as just going back and forth, which you would have to do with a broken rib stitch. So I knitted very quickly. I was travelling, I was doing two events abroad, and I brought it for knitting, and it was a very easy social knit. It was a quite mentally relaxing knit because it wasn't very difficult at all. I just brought my little printed pattern, 14 stitch markers, because I didn't want to count 14 or 13 or something around that line, and I just knitted. And then when I came home, I picked up the stitches for the underarms, for the arms and the neck hole, and then I just knitted that. I did learn and finally cement the Italian bind off, which I think is quite nice to know. But when PetiteKnit says bind off tight with Italian bind off, I don't know how I'm supposed to do it otherwise now. So next time I'll have to bind off a 1x1 rib. I will probably have to relearn it, because right now I feel like I have it in me to just pull it very tightly, just like PetiteKnit said I should, but it doesn't really stretch a lot, does it? Next up is another finished object. I initially cast this on because I cast this on last Friday, and I was waiting for company to come over, and I said, when I have the company, I want to knit on my Friday vest because I can do that in my sleep. But I'm this close to finishing, so I don't want to waste that social knitting when I'm by myself. And I have been wanting to knit a keffiyeh, and the bug just bit me. So I cast on a triangle scarf for a keffiyeh. I found a free chart by, I can't remember the name. I will have written it somewhere. And I used 2.5mm needles with the Alpakka Silke from Sandnes garn, which is the softest thing I have ever felt. And then I just kept knitting and kept knitting until I think on the Monday, so 3 days later, had this finished. I had never knit a triangle scarf like this before. I'd only seen my mother's very big ones, and I asked her how she constructs them, how does she do the increases, and she told me, and I did that. And with this very tight gauge on these very small needles, it's looking quite angular and not very triangular. This is what I wanted it to be, but I'm fine with it. These patterns they've been used as a symbol for the Palestinian struggle for eons. The Keffiyeh comes in many different shapes and patterns, and colourways. The Palestinian one is traditionally white and black. This pattern down here represents the fishnets to represent the very close relationship to the sea and the fishing, not industry, but you know what I mean. And when I knit this, I was thinking quite a lot about how the access to the sea has been cut off, that people living close to the sea, for example in the Gaza Strip, have been denied access to the water by the occupational forces. And honestly, I'm too tired right now and emotionally generally to be profound about it, but the black lines, they are the trade routes with other countries, and can we fucking agree that the rest of the world has failed a country that is not even admitted as a sovereign country by a lot of people, a lot of countries and people within those countries. This portion are the olive branches, olive leaves, and did you know that it takes fucking forever for an olive tree to grow up to maturity and produce olives? I think the maturity time is, off the top of my head, like 80 years. It takes 80 years for an olive tree to go from a sapling to producing olives, and olive trees all across Palestine have been ruined for the sake of ruining them. It's such a waste. So the Keffiyeh, the Palestinian Keffiyeh, feels like a very, very strong symbol. I have no affiliation to Palestine myself. I am half Swedish, half German. I'm born and raised in Sweden, and that heritage is difficult to deal with if talking about Palestine and talking about a genocide being committed by the Israeli government. But I wanted a Keffiyeh when I was a kid. In middle school, I had a bunch of friends who are definitely cooler than I was. They were wearing Keffiyehs as like the alt girls were, and I really, really wanted one. And my mother, who is German, said that wearing a Keffiyeh, a Palestine scarf, as we call them, as a half German, is going to be seen as something it's not meant as. And you have to be careful about it, and I won't allow you to wear one. That's one of the few things that my mother has ever forbidden me to wear, was a Palestine scarf. And now that I'm 32 years old, I'm a 32-year-old lady, I can decide for myself, and I have decided for myself. I've been wearing this for a few days, and it's very soft. It is, with the floats, very warm. It's so silky, however, that I can't just tie it once. I have to tie it 2 times because it will actually just slip open. Otherwise, I don't want to lose this, and I'm very proud about it, of it. I wish that the shape was what I had intended, however, but you live and you learn if you're afforded the privilege of living and learning, which I am. And I posted this on the subreddit Anti-Fascist Knitting, and it was overwhelmingly positive response. I was so happy, and that post has now reached like 20,000 people, which I think is insane. Social media is really cool. Now into my works in progress. I have... Did I bring the second one? Yes, I did. That cracking sound was the chair on my back. I don't know. As I just said, I'm 32. I'm turning 32 in a few weeks. Okay. This mushroom looking thing is a cuff that I set out to knit and sew into a ridiculous yellow coat that I own. I want to be able to wear the coat, and I don't because the sleeves are just too big. They're very couture, and the sleeves just let in a bunch of air. It's on top of that, it's open, and it doesn't really close. I have to sort of hold it closed, and living in a windy city, that is not very reasonable for me to hold something close and then be ambushed by wind into my sleeve. So I thought, let me knit cuffs for this and be done with it, because I bought this ridiculous yarn in Norway back in the summer. This is the Fnugg by Camilla Pil in an obnoxious yellow colour. I've knitted a hat in this. The hat was unfortunately just way too wind letting through because the fluff holds a bunch of warmth, but it doesn't prevent the wind when the wind has anything to say. So that was a bit of a flop. But these cuffs I'm knitting on a smaller needle. I am using 3.5mm needles, simple 2x2 rib, and when I get to my desired length I will increase quite rapidly to get a bigger disc, so I can sew in that disc into the sleeve and have these as my cuffs. And these are big enough to be relaxing. I don't want them to be restricting in any way, and they are small enough to actually keep out some of the cold. This is also going to fit over if I'm wearing a pair of mittens, or if I'm wearing a long sleeved shirt or something. This is going to fit over that. So this I am nearly finished with. And when I said that one of my goals for 2026 was to clear my needles, I mean clearing my needles, not sewing these in. I can't count that as a finished object when and only when it's sewn in to its final home. I mean when I'm finished knitting it, because I am this close to actually doing that. I have had a pair of socks in my work drawer for all of the meetings that I go to, and I've been knitting on them in my meetings, because what else do you do? I need to do something with my hands to focus. If I don't knit, I will take out my phone, I will take out a pen and doodle, so I knit in meetings. And this has turned out to be a very scrappy project, because initially I was just knitting with this brown melange colour, and then I finished one sock and I started the second one, came to about this point on the second sock, realised that I was going to run out of the brown, and I said, instead of buying more of this, because this is a Fabe printed from drops, I could have bought more and it would have been fine. I said, I'll just rip back the other sock and I will include a little other yarn. So I did that. I ripped back all of it. I held this brown together with the white and this is called helical knitting. When you knit on DPNs and you sort of do like this, it should be helical knitting. And I did that with the white until the white ran out, and then I took out this little scrap. I'm not a purple person, I don't like purple, and I'm never going to do anything for myself with this purple, and in the skein it doesn't look very appealing either. But in combination with this brown, this is all I have left for the second one, it sort of looks like a blueberry ice cream with chocolate ice cream, which I am a big fan of. Not maybe the taste combination, but I like the aesthetics of it. So one sock finished, second sock nearly finished. I am on the last few bits of the toe decrease, about halfway through. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. Yeah, so I have 8 more rows of decreasing every other row, and then I decrease every row and then I'm finished. So what does that leave me with? 17 more rounds, and then I'm finished with these. And that means that I will have cleared my needles, which is exciting. I will be able to tick something off my bingo card, and I will be able to focus completely on my next project. I've had a few projects in mind for that next project, and I think I have decided. And what I'm making is actually lying behind me. So first of all, I want to knit another pair of socks, because I have an idea of a pair of socks, a pair of wisteria socks. I love the look of wisteria. I think it's so ethereal. And I have this white yarn, this is drops, and I have a green soft silk mohair from Knitting for Olive, and I have this lovely variegated purplish to green to yellow yarn silk mohair as well from a local producer in Stockholm, Fnugg, which I would just absolutely love to use for this. So this is going with me on vacation, and once I go past the cuff with these colours, it's going to be a very social knit because I can knit socks in my sleep. I do, however, want to try a different heel construction, because I've always done the heel decreases on this side of the foot, so right here in a slope. I want to try making the decreases at the bottom of the foot, right here underneath the heel. I also want to learn how to do a rounded heel. I don't know what it's actually called, but I think this square heel has served me well, but I wanted to see if I can expand my knowledge of heel knitting, sock knitting. So that is my first project, which is going to be social. My second project is not going to be social at all. It's going to require my full attention. And I want to knit a fully cabled green cardigan. I have this and one more, and this is the Hillesvåg Ullvarefabrik Luna Norwegian lamb's wool yarn. This is 100 grams, 200 meters. It recommends using 4.5 to 5 millimeter needle, and I want to make my own cabled cardigan. Now, have I ever knitted a fully cabled garment? No. Have I ever self-drafted a cabled garment? No. Have I ever knitted a cardigan? Yes. But that was 2 pattern and a different construction that I am envisioning for this. So this is going to be a very engaging and hopefully a knit that teaches me a lot. This yarn is just absolutely gorgeous. I love the colour so much, and I had initially bought this to knit myself a pair of tights, a pair of thermal underwear, but this being 100% wool, I realised it's going to felt. My thighs do not lie. They like being in contact with each other, and they like chafing against each other, and 100% wool is just not going to stand a chance. I need to make this into something else. So a cardigan it is. I realised that this yarn is probably not going to be enough, and I will knit as far as I can with these and then order more yarn, and I know that that is going to mess up the colour work or the dye lot probably, but I had a plan, then I changed the plan, and now I have to live with the consequences. So that's going to be my unsocial knit for the next few units of time. To do that, I am using the Stitch Bible, the Japanese Stitch Bible, with the gorgeous stitch patterns. So I'm going to be knitting up some swatches in the car tomorrow, so I can see what I'm working with, how much yarn does it eat, what is my gauge like. I have no idea, and I don't have the knowledge to guess either. I'm going to be bringing my needle kit, I'm going to knit a swatch and see where that takes me, and then I will start knitting my cardigan. But first, today I'm going to finish these 2 works in progress. So I have actually cleared my needles. I don't know when that happened last. It's well before I started this channel last May, because I always have something. So thanks for watching. I hope that you didn't have insomnia today and that you actually slept the hours that you meant to. And I hope to see you in my next one. Stay tuned for my cardigan updates. I'm excited. Take care, drink water, pet an animal,